Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This is Guerilla Advocacy, which is part of COVID long haulers against fascism. Um, this is our response to gestures broadly. Thank you for being here. My name is Amanda Finley. I'm a COVID long hauler. Before COVID, I was an archaeologist, and now I work at the Mary Mary IRS for now. We all know how that's going. So I'm going to turn the baton over to you, Hartzell, if you would like to give us an introduction, tell us about yourself. Thank you for being here again. I really appreciate it. And I need to send you an unmute thing. Hold on.
How's that sound? Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Fantastic. Well, hey everyone. My name is Hartzell Gray, and I didn't want to lead with this, but I see that there are also some candidates on the call. So I am running for Congress here in Kansas City, Missouri. It is the Missouri 5th District. I'm an organizer. I organize with my tenant union. I do some national political work as well. I got my start in radio and television, so we're telling a couple bad jokes and playing Jack White and David Bowie records, and it was awesome. But now, yeah, gonna dip my toe into this Congress thing because I think that this moment requires it requires bold, not just leadership but action. Our people are angry. I mean, we're on this call because we're angry, and we're gonna use this pain and this passion, and we're going to turn it into policy, right? That's what we're here for. And so I guess I have the honor of kind of kicking this whole thing off. But I guess, Amanda, before I go into my spiel, did you want to tee up and just kind of give folks an overview of the whole town hall, or how do you want to do this?
Gladly, yeah. So I've got an amazing group of people. There are about 15 of us speaking today. Um, and this is people from all walks of life. So we've got people representing the disability community. We've got people who are descended from those who were in internment camps during World War II. We've got people from, over here you see Grayson. Grayson is in my married kitchen right now. Hi, Grayson. People from all walks of life. But we all have the same goal. We want change. We cannot have an authoritarian regime in this country. That's not what this country is about. But we can't expect anyone to go fight for us. We have to fight for it. There will not be a cavalry coming in to save us. We have to go take it. So thank you so much for being here. And Hartzell, I couldn't start with anybody but you. So
well, now I feel like we got the proper tee up, right? Like now I feel like we're ready to go. And with that, I guess my remarks are going to be, I guess, actually a good overview. I think if I can, give me the grace to kind of put my words into what I hope is some sense and some context. And I'm just so happy to be here with everybody. So I'm honored to be in community with you all. And I think tonight when we say no camps, I think that we're not just logging into a Zoom call, right? I think that we are drawing a line, right? Like I said, I'm running for office because our folks need us more than ever. And by our folks, but when I say need us, I mean we need us. I mean, we got us. Again, that's why we're on this call together, right? And this line is a line between democracy and what I think is dehumanization, right? It is a line between dignity and domination. And it is the future we deserve versus the past that is trying to be forced upon us. And so I think that another reason why we're here today, again, not just to highlight the awfulness of it all, but it is a call for our collective future, right? Not just my future, not just for Amanda's future, but no, like we are here because we understand the power of solidarity and community, the strength that comes through that. And so this is a call for our future, our collective future. It's not just a call for a world that we can build, though. It's a world that we believe in because we are brave enough to name what is happening. and to say that we are each other's keeper and that we want to move past this awfulness and to take hold of our history and to put together something that is new and that is truly of and by and for the people. And all we need, I think, is the courage and the community. And we also need to acknowledge the moments, right? These moments that we're in. Camps don't start with fences, right? I think camps start with fear, and in some cases with that rhetoric. The laws and the quiet acceptance of the cruelty sometimes. And like we already know, which is why we're here on this call, in his second term, Donald Trump has turned ICE into an unaccountable deportation machine. We've seen that families have been uh, torn apart not just at the border, but right here in the heartland. For me, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. They have torn people apart at food pantries, morning arrest at bus stops, at Home Depots, at trial, as our folks who are trying to do it the right way, as they're trying to follow the processes because of some okey dokes and some rigmarole, and because of honestly just cruelty and bigotry. We've got folks now who can't even wait in line. They're getting disappeared and abducted before they can even try to do it right. This isn't enforcement. We know that. This is vengeance and it is violence. And it is not just, in my opinion, a national security threat. This is state sanctioned cruelty. Like that's what this is. And it's not just physical, it's also cultural. In this moment that we are in, it's political. Take for example the case of Mahmoud Khalil. He is a Palestinian artist and he's a peaceful protester in Michigan, right? And he was arrested, he was detained, he was placed in a dungeon. And this was a man who was just handing out flyers, right? These are flyers that were calling for a ceasefire. These are flyers that were calling for dignity. And we have seen over and over again, we're talking about no cages. We're talking about no concentration camps. We have seen over and over again how folks like us on this call, right? At least I want to think that we're folks who stand on power in the name of peace and in liberation. And our comrades, our brothers, our sisters, everyone across the binary, we are being literally attacked. We are being sprayed. We're being maced. We're being surveilled. But the billionaires who are funding all this and who are watching from afar from the C-suites and the high rises, they're not getting kettled. They're getting invited to the galas. Where's their cage at? And don't just ask Mahmoud Khalil. You can ask the hundreds, the countless of our not just student protesters, but protesters all across the country, the world, multiracial, multi-generational, for speaking out in this moment of authoritarianism, of silence, of complicity, of genocide. It is not extremist to demand life. It's not extremist or radical to refuse seeing our brothers and sisters be put in cages. No one is illegal, whatever the hell that means. But as I kind of just touched on a little bit, we're fighting not just the cages and the barbed wires of it all. We are fighting an ideology that says some people can just be thrown away. Some people are disposable. And that ideology, yes, it builds, immigrant detention centers and concentration camps. It is an ideology that arms apartheid. It is an ideology that watches disabled folks die behind locked doors, or folks who aren't believed when they say that long COVID is real. An ideology where long-term care facilities and hospitals are being bought and sold by private equity, and investigations are just kind of commented as we'll get to that later. That's also a cage, my friends. And too often that ideology, it's defended, and not just always by the like extreme far right. Sometimes it is those who just tell us to be patient, or for those who just want to change the verbiage of what already is bad policy, right? Or some folks who just have grown comfortable in the halls of power, right? Those who will legislate by press release, but they won't sign on to ceasefires, or they won't physically put themselves in between an ICE agent and our undocumented homie who is just doing the best he can, or in some cases, actual American citizens who are just being disappeared. Where are our representatives who are literally going to put themselves in between those people? And again, we've got even folks on our side. Well, I'm running in the Democratic primary, right? And so we've got folks who would rather just bend the knee to this reactionary rhetoric. We're just as tough on crime or tough on the border as anybody else. But you don't hear anyone talking about the pathway to citizenship, right? You're not talking about how we're going to protect our DACA recipients, or DAPA recipients for that matter too, right? And there is, again, just that more quiet acceptance of a cage, the more acceptable cage, one that we've been taught that's normal. And it's a cage that is built on debt, low wages, unaffordable housing, health systems that only work for folks who can pay for it. Like I said, it doesn't need barbed wire because it's got late fees, right? It doesn't need a guard. It just needs, a broken bus line and an overdraft fee, or an unexpected broken bone, or your car got broken into. That's an economic cage that is also holding millions and millions of us back, holding us captive. We were told that the market was freedom. The market was the way out of our chains, right? When most people, the market feels like a form of containment for the working class. And like so many of us who are going to speak tonight, and I promise I'll get done here pretty soon, we know what it's like to be trapped. I have been that someone who has sat on the psychiatric ward after trying to take my own life and wondering if any of this still mattered, right? And I have been that same person who got out of the hospital, happy to still be here, but then had to look and stare down at a bill that I know I'm never going to be able to pay for. That's another cage. It was Thomas Paine. I'm a sucker for Thomas Paine. He, the guy, These Are the Times That Try Men's Soul. That guy. He wrote Common Sense, the document that turned a rebellion into a revolution, in my opinion, right? And he said that those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must undergo the fatigue of supporting it. And for far too many of our elected representatives, this isn't just any kind of fatigue, right? It is a moral fatigue. And it's a fatigue that is watching leaders who have grown so cautious, or for some of you who live in deep red states, maybe so callous that they have maybe forgotten how to fight, or they are fighting us. So to that, we say no to camps. We say no to cages. We say no to institutions that disappear people, both emotionally, physically, and I guess a third, economically. And again, we're here to say yes. We're on this call to say yes to care and to solidarity and to freedom that doesn't depend on wealth or citizenship or someone's ability to be useful. We are not asking for a better version of the same old system. We're on this call because we're building a new one, and we're building it together. So, my friends, like I said, I didn't come here tonight just to name all the harms that we're going through. That gets real depressing real quick. But I also want to, as we continue to hear all these amazing speakers, and I can sit back now and just relax and learn and listen, I want to help remind us of who we are. You know, we are the descendants of Harriet Tubman and Fannie Lou Hamer, and we are the inheritors of Frederick Douglass, who said that power concedes nothing without a demand, right? And I believe that yes, we walk into the footsteps of folks like FDR and labor leader A. Philip Randolph, who spoke of those cages, but also gave us a vision of an economic bill of rights and social housing and universal health care, the best public education, tuition free college, trade schools, a job with dignity and a living wage, labor protections. As MLK said, the arc of moral universe, it bends toward justice, but only if we bend it. That's our call today. We don't need permission to say the word genocide. We don't need permission to say abolish ICE. We don't need permission to say never again means now. We don't need permission to say not in our name. If we organize, my brothers and sisters, my friends, if we speak, if we dream bigger than what we've been told is possible, then we can bring an end to concentration camps, economic cages, and the ideologies that build them all. And I'll close with this. Again, I'm a sucker for history and I'm a nerd for FDR. His Solicitor General, 1937. His name was Robert H. Jackson. And he said that we too are founders. We too are makers of a nation. And it's on us to take hold of our history, reclaim our American promise. And as Thomas Paine said, we have it within our power to begin the world over again. And so with that, I thank you all for having me here. My name again is Hartzell Gray, running for Congress in the Missouri 5th District. We got us, baby. We got us. Amanda, who's next?
Thank you so much. And I before we move on to Effie, I gotta tell you, Hartzell is not just a person of words, he's a person of action. A year ago today, I was still living in a tent, but I'd been in that tent for a few months. And it was cold. It was still cold at night. Hartzell was the person who brought me a nice warm blanket so that I wouldn't be so cold. So that he sees something and he just does it. So thank you.
Love you.
Effie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm both delighted to be here and furious that we have to be here. I have a personal connection to some of what's going on today. My grandmother was the only survivor of her family in Nazi Poland. Her parents managed to get her hidden away with another family, but everybody else was murdered either in camps or without, and she wound up being alone in the world. So, with this personal history, I have some feelings about concentration camps. And as a writer and satirist, I wanted to share them with you. So this is written just for this. This is called an automated phone tree for your brand new alligator-themed detention center that is definitely not a concentration camp. Content warning, totally a concentration camp. Welcome to the automated phone line of the new alligator-themed detention center, which is definitely not a concentration camp. Your call is very important to us. Please listen carefully to the following menu options, which have recently changed. To find out if your loved one is in this facility, please leave a message with their name, physical description, and a justification of why they deserve a place in Trump's America. To speak to a detained person in this facility, please dial the crying face emoji. To find out about the conditions your loved one is held in, please leave a message in meme form. AI representations of Trump as Superman will be given precedence. To find out which other country your loved one is going to be shipped off to, please query Elon Musk's chatbot Mecha Hitler Grok directly, as we're integrating it into our systems. To retrieve your loved one's body, leave a message with your name, their name, and whether you're using the discount for bulk pickup. For additional options, please stay on the line. To let us know that racial profiling is illegal, please remember that thanks to recent Supreme Court rulings, we can do what we want. To ask why your loved one has not received due process of the law, please leave a message with your name, email address, and the sound of you tearing up a copy of the U.S. Constitution. To let us know that a detained person is actually a citizen, or is in the country legally, or has broken no laws, kindly hang up the phone because we don't care. For additional options, please stay on the line. For a faster response, many of our services can be accessed online. If you're calling to ask if the masked people with no uniform or identification who disappeared your loved one are ICE, or just random people cosplaying as ICE, please go to magic8ball.com. To let us know that this is super Nazi-like, we thank you for the compliment and assure you we're doing our best. You can go to alligatordetentioncentergiftshop.com for all the best alligator merch. To apply for a job with ICE or at the alligator-themed detention center, please go to justfollowingorders.com. Thank you for calling the alligator-themed detention center that's definitely not a concentration camp. If you still need assistance and would like to speak to an agent, please leave your name, phone number, physical description, and an exact location where you can be found at 3 p.m. tomorrow. We'll send someone to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Effie. Once again, knocked it out of the park. So for our next speaker wasn't able to be here in person today. Let's see. Let me figure this out. There we go. Our next speaker wasn't able to be here in person today, so he sent a video ahead of time. You may be familiar with Fred Wellman. He's a political consultant in St. Louis, and I'll play his video for you right now. The play button. No? Let's try something else here. Hold on. Sorry, my bad. Okay. Oh, sorry. Apologies, everyone. I'm so sorry. Let me pull Fred back up. Actually, while I'm doing that, Daniella, are you comfortable going? Give me just a second here. I'm so sorry. Oh. Where are you? There you are. Okay, Daniella, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear
Yes, perfect.
me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me, everybody, and thank you for, it was hard to follow Effie. That was very thought-provoking. So hi, everybody. Good evening, Missouri, and I guess we've got people from across the nation. My name is Daniella Velázquez, and I'm honored to be here with you today. I'm the Alderwoman of the 6th Ward in the city of St. Louis. I'm the first Latina ever elected to serve the city. But let me be clear, I did not run to be the first. I ran to make sure I would not be the last. And today I'm not just here as an elected official. I'm here as the daughter of diaspora, a proud Boricua whose family left their homeland to build something better. Just like the immigrant workers, neighbors, and families across this state and nation who deserve dignity, not detention. But being here with you, I never thought I'd be afraid that I could be arrested or detained just because of my name or because somebody decided that I didn't belong here. But that's the fear too many of us are carrying. And that's the fear we're here tonight to confront together. Yes, I was born an American, but in this country, my name, my skin, and my family still put a target on my back. I'm a first-generation St. Louisan, the daughter of Puerto Rican parents who moved here from New York looking for something better. They moved from an island that can be drafted in the war but can't vote for president. During Trump's first administration, when Puerto Rico was without power for 11 months, the longest blackout in United States history, the only thing the so-called president could do was throw paper towels at us. This administration has made it clear that cruelty is the point. He has reminded us of the lessons that we have known for generations, that citizenship is not the same as power. I know what it's like to carry the weight of pride and pressure at the same time, to honor where you came from while trying to navigate a city or country that doesn't always see you. So much so that I got my passport card in the mail to carry around with me just in case something happens. I never thought I would be scared of being detained or threatened with deportation simply because of my name. But in the past few months, how many stories have we heard of Americans being arrested because they were suspicious? And we all on this call know it's not paranoia. We all know that it's happening. Watching videos of ICE agents on horseback invade public parks in LA to terrorize children playing soccer. Just ask Narcisco Barranco, 48-year-old man, a man with no criminal history, and the father of 3 US Marines who was violently arrested by ICE and detained for several days. Just ask the 15-year-old who was sent to the immigrant internment camp. I'm not calling it what it's called. So yes, the concentration camp in Florida. Last week I was in Chicago, and there over a dozen marked vehicles with armed men in plain clothes descended on the parking lot of the National Puerto Rican Arts and Culture Museum in Humboldt Park, Chicago, the storied Puerto Rican neighborhood. They had no warrants, no motive, and provided no identification. These cars full of 15 cars full of people stayed on site for 2 hours, refusing to leave for one purpose only: to intimidate and terrorize the Hispanic community, and to send a message that we're being watched. And on this call, we're here because we know that this is the America that Donald Trump wants to normalize. But not here, not us. That's why you dialed in, right? Because the America I was raised to believe in stands up. So this brings me to you all. This is a rally. This is a guerrilla. Invisible, and this group is a little thicker skin than some of the others. Maybe I get it down, and you can. I hope so, because I'm glad we're having these frank conversations. After Trump was elected in my time, there was a clear panic from progressives in my life. The panic that they just didn't know how to help. They weren't directly tied to the communities most at risk, and they just wanted to jump in and fix it without understanding what they were trying to fix. Sometimes it's what we do, and I get it. So here tonight, I'm coming with advice. First, all of you, thank you for being here. We love you, and we absolutely want and need you in this fight with us. History has shown us that when allies become accomplices, we make gains faster. An accomplice is someone who knows how to use their rights. They understand the privilege they carry into every space, including me. I've got privilege in some space, just like this card, right? This card is privilege. And accomplices use that privilege to protect others, even if it means putting themselves at risk. So you won't find a checklist. You won't find a sticker that says you're accomplice. I'm sure somebody could make one if you'd like. But what we need is intentional effort. And right, that's why we're on this call, to learn and to prepare. So when the moment comes, you are ready. So today, again, is an example of the desire that you all here have to prepare and to help. So I'm going to just give you some basic tips on how we can do this. So one, start with knowing your rights and the rights of undocumented people. I'll drop a link into the chat when I'm done. You've seen the red cards, but know your rights. And then secondly, or thirdly, however order you want to order it, get to know your immigrant friends and neighbors. For real, you don't have to be weird. We just want you to be a friend. Secondly, shop at immigrant-owned businesses. Take your friends, take your family, your good family, and spend your money there. And then I'll drop a link to this too, but print and distribute red cards. Again, you don't have to be weird. Just drop them in businesses or bathrooms where you see immigrants. with other friends, have conversations with your fellow accomplices, and just be prepared. Learn some Spanish. You might be in other communities where there are different immigrant groups that have different languages. I'll tell you, I may have a very Latino sounding name, but Spanish is my second language, so I even have to use an app. So me and Duo are good friends. So now you know you have privilege. Learn to use your privilege and how to use your privilege if you see ICE. So this is an abbreviated version. I also have all of you that I'm sure there are classes where you can learn ICE Watch, Migra Watch in your communities. I encourage you to do that. But if you see an ICE raid, film it. So film it. Don't interfere, but be loud. Let them know that you're there and let them know that you know your rights and the rights of those people where that's happening to. I have a megaphone in my trunk. Maybe you should get one too. Put it to good use. Draw attention to yourself so attention is taking off the people being hunted. We've seen the videos of people being human chains to put themselves physically around their neighbors. If you have privilege, that's why it's important to understand, if you have that privilege, use it. And that's why it's important to know your rights. Learn certain phrases in Spanish. Do not open the door. No abras la puerta. The warrant must be in Spanish. We've heard this. Well, the warrant must be in Spanish and it must be signed by a judge. The judicial warrants are important. So, la orden deba estar en español y firmada por un juez. And nobody has to answer any questions. And these are things you can tell folks in Spanish. Again, if you have different communities, different languages. No respondas ningunas preguntas. I want an attorney. It's right. Quiero un abogado. If they question everybody nearby, stay. That's good. Stand there, stay silent, be loud. Refuse to answer questions until a lawyer is present. So these are a few tips. I'm not going to take up the whole night, but I know in the communities that you can be trained in this information and use your privilege to protect people. So this is where we find ourselves. We all need to learn more about our rights, our neighbors, our skill sets, and ways that we can leverage what we individually bring to the table. And that may look different from me, Amanda, to you, Grayson, to Seven, to Effie, and ways that and I know there are more people on this call, but the ways our skill sets and the ways and what we can leverage our privilege so that when the opportunity presents itself, we can stand up and fight for one another. Because we are here, we are staying, and we are rising. And we are the democracy they fear.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we connected. This is wonderful. This is exactly what we need to be doing. If you have that privilege, use it. Use it. Use it for good. So next up, Laura, I'm going to have you go after this. I'm going to pull up Fred here and let's get this going. Work. Maybe. There we go. Okay, sorry. We've got several people on devices here in my house. Hey, Grace, you might want to turn your video off. Oh, here we go.
Hey guys, Fred Wellman here. I'm really sorry I can't join you tonight live. As you can see, I'm traveling out of town with family on a vacation. But when Amanda reached out to me, when Amanda calls you, you get involved. But when Amanda reached out to me to ask me to help, I had to. I'm Fred Wellman. I'm the host of On Democracy's FPWellman and the MeidasTouch Network, as well as Too Late to Cancel on the On Democracy Network itself. This, some other stuff. I've been a political activist for a long time. I was with the Lincoln Project. I've done it all. But most importantly for this conversation, I'm a veteran of 22 years in the United States Army. And in that 22 years, I served around the world. I did 4 combat tours. And one of the places I served, I did 3 combat tours in Iraq. And after the fall of Saddam and Baghdad, I actually spent that first year of the war doing civil affairs near our base in northern Iraq. I was an aviator, but in 101st Airborne, everybody did civil affairs, so I did civil affairs. And what that meant was I spent quality time. I spent time sitting with our Iraqi partners in their homes. I worked with a guy specifically named Dr. Muhammad. Dr. Muhammad was a sheikh of a village. He was also a full doctor, medical doctor, trained at Mosul University. And I remember talking to Dr. Muhammad as August 2003 unfolded. We started seeing bombs going off outside our bases on the highways. And often they were planted in broad daylight. And I said to Dr. Muhammad one day, I said, Dr. Muhammad, I don't understand. These are being planted in broad daylight. Iraqis are driving by and civilians see them plant the bomb. Why are they not reporting it to the authorities? Why don't they call the American unit, stop at the next checkpoint, and say, hey, I saw somebody planting bombs? You know, why are they not doing these things? And you know what Dr. Muhammad told me, and it stuck with me now over 22 years. He said, you have to understand something, Major Wellman. In Iraq, under a dictator, or anywhere, you learn not to see things. You learn not to see when the black vehicles arrive next door in the middle of the night and take the family away to never be seen again. You learn not to see that. And I remember being so impressed by that comment and thinking to myself, thank God, here in America, I'll never have to do that. Back home in America, we'll never have to do that. But now it's 2025, and men in masks are stalking our streets. They're scooping up people based on the color of their skin. They're scooping up people because they ran away from the people in masks. These people don't identify themselves. They barge into private property without warrants. They refuse to say who they're looking for. They just grab people. But more insidiously, they're grabbing people who are actually doing it right. People who are going to their asylum hearings. People who are going to their immigration hearings. And when the judge, who by the way is paid by DHS, when the judge says no, they arrest them on the spot. One of the most shocking pictures I've ever seen this week was a young woman coming out of her immigration hearing with a beautiful smile on her face, because it was actually a good hearing. And the ICE agent with a mask takes her. He's waiting for the door. She still has her smile on her face. And where are they going? Well, they're going to the camps. I just read an article this morning in the Washington Post about Alligator Alcatraz, most disgusting name imaginable, where thousands of people are jammed into cages, being flooded when it rains, covered in mosquitoes, and they're lying about it. And it's costing millions of our dollars for a symbolic hate movement. Because that's what this is all about. They're not scooping up criminals. They're scooping up people who simply looked for a better life. You know, my family came to America in 1640, my father's family, in 1640. We were Puritans. We left England where the Puritan prison was, Ilchester, England, where the Puritan prison was located, to come to America, the Massachusetts colony, and settle in Lynn, Mass. Linfield, called Lynn, Fields of Lynn. We'd fight in the Revolutionary War, fight in the War of 1812, fight in the Civil War, fight in World War I, fight in World War II, fight in Iraq, in Desert Storm. But my mother's side came through Ellis Island in 1905. First generation. My mom is a second generation American. Her parents were born in Italy. And so they came, if they were healthy, they changed their names and went on their way. That was how you came to America. Now it's a multi-year process. And the price for failure, the price for missing paperwork, is you're shipped off to a place like CCOT in El Salvador with no hope for being ever released. They know they're doomed. They have Stephen Miller's quotas to meet, and they're meeting those quotas, and it doesn't matter who they catch. And the final note, because I've gone for a bit longer than I planned, is without due process for everyone, there's no due process for anyone. And that's what we're seeing this most insidious of all. American citizens, when they raided the cannabis farm in California this week, they scooped up a U.S. Army veteran who was a security guard under contract by the owner and kept him for 3 days, even though he said he was a citizen. He had paperwork, ID showing he was a citizen. They didn't care. Because you know what? Those ICE agents met their quota. But even more insidious was the outer perimeter of that raid was U.S. Army soldiers, National Guardsmen. They're using the power of our military now to scoop people up for their quotas. We are in a very dangerous time in America. So it's my privilege to talk to you guys today have this conversation with you. I'm sorry I'm not there to have a conversation with you, but I want to let you know that, those of us who are fighting and advocating for this democracy before it's too late, we know, and you know, and that's how we fight. We fight by using our voices, by calling them out, by protesting, by standing up for their rights, by getting in the way. We have a lot more power than you realize by just like this gathering of using our voices and using these stories for our democracy before it is too late. It is not too late. And the one thing, for some reason, even after 20 years in the Army and being in politics for half a decade or more, I still have this weird nugget of optimism and a belief in that America can do better, America can fight for better if we work together, if we use our voices, if we use the Democrat power we have, the tools in our toolbox. So with that, I hope you have a great evening. Thank you, Amanda, for inviting me. Thank you, our speakers. Again, I apologize not being there in person tonight. I will be off. But in the meantime, don't lose hope, okay? We still have hope. We are still a country of rules and laws, even as Donald Trump and his minions try to tear them down, even as his elected officials like Missouri 2's Ann Wagner try to go along and act like they're not. We still have the power as the people, and I hope you recognize as well as I do. In the meantime, good luck out there. Thank you for doing this, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, I love Fred, and I'm so grateful he took the time to do that for us. Laura, I'm going to bring you up.
Okay, so my name is Laura Sorrells, and I live in North Georgia. I have long COVID, and I was a public school teacher for over 21 years before I became disabled. So I just have a statement here that I kind of want to read. I've learned so much today. Thank you all for everything, for being here. So as we know, detainees and prisoners at ICE facilities in Georgia, as well as everywhere else, are not being treated humanely. So to start with, there's so many examples of people who are being detained without cause, held for unconscionable periods of time without due process, just shoved in a facility. A 19-year-old honors business student at Dalton College was seized and held without explanation, without recourse to an attorney for 2 weeks. So many people are just trying to do their jobs, parent, attend school, just simply survive. Children, they're being taken and held in facilities that ICE itself. It acknowledges they're unfit for human habitation, that they have serious issues. For instance, the big ICE facility in Folkston, Georgia, has been proven to have showers full of mold, inoperable toilets, people sleeping on the floor for extended periods of time, no access to medical attention, and inadequate cooling. So even if these conditions existed solely for those who were convicted of crimes that legally warranted prison time, it would be a gross violation of human rights even then, of course. So certainly that's true. But so many of these detainees are being held illegally without their charges are not being actually formally filed. There's no reason for them to actually be detained. That's happening at Folsom and at Stewart Detention Center in Atlanta. So not only that, Folsom plans to expand, despite ICE itself enumerating these problems in an inspection, kind of a pro forma inspection. It is contracted with a large private security company called Geo Group. I'm thinking of IG Farben here, to expand substantially. This tells me that ICE plans to continue seizing and detaining anybody they want to. This is not a situation where a respectably managed, accountable state or federal facility is planning on housing career criminals or those convicted of serious crimes. No, these are our friends, our neighbors, our parents, our children, the people we see every day who will not be offered due process or any help with trying to actually clear the immense legal hurdles involved in achieving citizenship if needed. And as stated, so many of these people were actually seized while trying to take care of their citizenship, while actually trying to meet those goals and become citizens. So that's not what they want. We've seen people who have held green cards for years being detained at length, along with decorated citizens who are U.S. military veterans and expectant mothers who did not receive the medical care needed. I could go on and on and on. I just kept writing across example after example of why is this person here. I mean, there's no excuse for the way anyone is treated with this, but it's just there are no boundaries, there are no parameters. So simply put, private prison facilities are collaborating with ICE and private contractors to oppress and imprison human beings without providing them the basic human necessities and rights of clean water, safe and humane lodging, medical care, and due process. The storm of ICE raids and detentions may even be something that some people are becoming accustomed to. The more they do these things, the more overwhelming and unassailable they hope their attacks will be. We need to do all we can to let them know we aren't ever going to be okay with what they do. A friend of mine said recently, in a very hopeful spirit, a helpful frame of mind, that she hoped the people who provide the contracting work for the folks in the expanded facility will be boycotted by local people, that people will refuse to do business with them. So we're past that, unfortunately. These are large companies that only do these jobs with big entities like ICE. Individuals can't simply boycott and hope that helps. We need to contact our congressional representatives and let them know we won't stand by and watch Georgia slide deeper into this pit of abuse and criminality that these facilities inhabit. I personally can't usually physically protest, and I feel so helpless sometimes. But I have reached out to my Congress people, and I'll continue to search for other ways to raise my voice, to raise awareness, and counter these horrific violations of human rights. There are quite a few active, dynamic, transparent immigrant advocacy organizations out there, and I'm still informing myself about how I can help them. And I've learned a lot today. Still, I feel pretty helpless. That's how they want us to feel, but we are not helpless. None of us are helpless. This is our government, and these abuses aren't acceptable. Please let them know you know, and that you won't be silent, that you will resist. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Amanda. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Laura is one of my, I have a support group for people with long COVID, and that Laura's in my group. And that's exactly why we started taking these rallies online, because many of us cannot get physically to a rally. We physically cannot get through a rally. So thank you for being here, and everyone who's here, with, even if you can physically go to a rally, thank you for supporting us. That means the world. So Bethany, I'm gonna have you come on up next. Thank you so much for being here.
It's really great to be here. Thank you so much, Amanda. And gosh, it's hard to follow so many great guests, Fred Wellman, and just so many wonderful stories. Thank you all so much for having me here. My name is Bethany Mann. I'm a scientist, a military daughter, a mom of 3, and I was raised in Forestell, Missouri, a town of fewer than 400 people where folks show up when someone's hurting. And let me be real with you. I've wiped up more crap for my toddlers than half these DC politicians have ever done in their entire careers. I built a career working with farmers to test their soybeans and corn. I helped small towns and smaller cities protect our water from toxic chemicals. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not a political insider. I'm someone who's lived what so many of us are going through, trying to raise a family, stay healthy, and build a future in a system that feels like it was designed to leave us behind. And that's why I'm running for Congress in Missouri's 3rd district. Because I believe, like many of you do, that every single one of us deserves real freedom. The freedom to care for our families without going bankrupt when someone gets sick, to decide what happens to our own bodies, to drink clean water, breathe clean air, and have healthy and safe food to eat, to make a good living, build a future where our family and our friends can retire in dignity. And these freedoms are under attack, not just from one person like my opponent, healthcare Gutton, doesn't care if ICE wears body cams or your neighbors have due process, Dr. Allergist Bob Onder. These freedoms are under attack by every single politician who is more focused on doing the work of lobbyists and billionaires than the people they are paid to represent. By every politician who shuts down hospitals and underfunds our schools, then they say teachers and nurses are the problem. Those who slash the Medicaid and who slash our Medicaid and VA funding, and then they go tell us to go blame immigrants. Just a few weeks ago, Congress passed a budget that included an extra $170 billion for anti-New American efforts, including $75 billion of extra funding for ICE. And now we're seeing the impact in real time. Earlier this year, an 11-year-old girl recovering from brain cancer was deported to Mexico. Last week, an Egyptian American chaplain at a children's hospital. A man granted asylum in 2018 after being tortured for doing his job as a journalist. He was detained by ICE during just a routine check-in. And in Florida, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis funneled disaster relief money into that to build that Alligator Alcatraz, which is a fancy name for a camp. And this administration is fast tracking $45 billion for more of these camps across the country, all while gutting Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIPS. They're gutting those benefits by more than $1 trillion. And that's not security, that's cruelty, plain and simple. And let's be honest, that is not a mistake. It is a strategy. Political extremists want us so busy blaming our neighbors that they don't see them selling out our freedoms behind closed doors. As a mom, I could never imagine teaching my kids that cruelty is acceptable. I want my children to grow up in a country that values decency, democracy, and sees every child as worth protecting, because the promise of the American dream should belong to all of us. And that means everyone deserves the freedom to build a life and keep their family safe. As a Missourian, I've seen firsthand what happens when politicians care more about power and headlines than the people they're supposed to be serving. In Missouri, we were the first state in the country to strip away reproductive freedoms the moment that Roe fell, using a trigger law that my opponent helped write. Since 2014, 21 rural hospitals have already closed, and now the GOP has put 25 more at risk just in this state. And 750,000 Missourians and Illinoisans are now at risk of losing their Medicaid coverage too. In Missouri, even a single person on average makes $24,000 less than the comfortable cost of living, and parents need to be making close to almost $250,000 a year to feed a family of 4. I lost my father, and my kids, they lost their grandfather. He died while he was waiting for a VA bed. So I have zero patience for political hacks who slashed 30,000 VA jobs while handing out about $2 trillion in health cuts to the nation's wealthiest people. Instead of fixing the healthcare crisis, keeping our rural hospitals open, making sure our veterans get the care that they've earned, they're sending active duty Marines into American cities to stoke fear, silence speech, and demonize people pursuing the American dream. But here's some good news. We can win back Congress, and we can deliver it to the people, because bless their hearts, these extremist politicians, they're trying to divide us, but they have no idea what Missouri is capable, what America is capable of, and that districts like mine, they're flippable. Last cycle, out of shoestring budget and a whole lot of heart, we were able to deliver more Democratic votes in Missouri's 3rd than Missouri's 3rd has seen in over a decade. We moved the needle farther than any Democrat since 2008, and we earned even more than $40,000, or even more than 40,000 more votes than the last time the seat went blue. And we did it without corporate PACs, without DC consultants calling the shots, and without selling out our values. Because the Missouri that I love, the America that I love, whose colors I proudly fly, and that my father fought for, that my grandfather fought for, they stand up against corruption and division. We stand up against masked agents abducting mothers, fathers, and children in the streets and sending them to foreign countries. We stand up for due process, and we believe that the American dream should be accessible to each and every one of us, regardless of the color of our skin, the zip code we grew up in, who we pray to, or the size of our paycheck. And that's the America that I'm teaching my children to love, that I'm teaching my children to fight for. And so I'm asking you, I need your help. I need you to knock on some doors, and I need you to donate to my campaign. I'm a grassroots campaign, and every little bit that you help makes a big difference in my grassroots campaign. Chip in what you can, $100, $50, even $5, whatever you give will help us compete. And please share our message with the people that you love and trust. Together, we're going to flip this seat, not just the sake of for winning an election, but to make real freedom possible for everyone in this country. And so now it is my honor to be able to introduce former New York State Assemblywoman, proud working class fighter, and former candidate for Congress in New York's 10th Congressional District, Yulin.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, Uline wasn't able to make it today.
Okay. Maybe I won't then.
I know. I'm really looking forward to having her too. Yeah,
That's
Uline was she's a force, but she's also a force with a brand new baby. So.
Oh my gosh. Oh well.
We'll get her another time. Next up, I'm going to pull up Sarah Gerwig from all the way down in Georgia. Let me get you unmuted here, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a law professor and I teach criminal law and human rights in Macon, Georgia. And I'm also a COVID long hauler, and it's my honor to be here today. In January 2025, the United States made some big changes, and that's what brings us here today. But in January 2025, the United States already incarcerated the highest percentage of its citizenry of any country in the world. I spent a lot of time in prisons and jails in the Deep South, and there are shame. They're human rights violations. Our nation has already decided in 2025 that it won't ratify major international human rights treaties because of our commitment to using the death penalty and to prosecuting children as adults. I contracted COVID visiting clients in prison in March 2020, and many US prisoners did not make it through the pandemic because of abysmal medical care. So there were already human rights issues and violations to fight in December 2024. But in just 6 months, this country has jumped the shark. We've taken a sharp turn in the wrong direction, conducting raids in schools and places of employment, arresting green card holders for peaceful protests or writing an op-ed, detaining US citizens because they fit the description. And now Florida's built a concentration camp. But Georgia, not to be outdone, is expanding its already inhumane facilities to be larger and less humane, another camp. While we're on the subject of camps, I want to remind everyone on the call, I'm sure you all know this, that Anne Frank didn't die in a gas chamber. I was in Holland a few months ago and was able to spend some time in the secret annex where she and her family lived for the few years before they were caught and arrested. And it's so chilling to be there always, but chilling especially in these times. Anne Frank and her sister, Margot, died from disease caused by inhumane conditions at the Bergen-Belsen work camp. Their mother died of malnutrition and starvation. There are lots of ways to kill a human being, and sometimes we do it with our commitment to capital punishment, and sometimes we do it with apathy. This is from her journal, her diary. Terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. They're allowed to take only a knapsack and a little cash with them, and even then they're robbed of their possessions on the way. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find their parents have disappeared. Women return from shopping to find their houses sealed, their families gone. Anne Frank's family were refugees. They were German. They fled to settle in Amsterdam where they thought they'd be safe after the Germans took power in Germany, Nazis took power in Germany. They had papers, but when the Nazis invaded Holland, Jews were declared to be illegal. Like so many immigrants and asylum seekers in America now, they ran for their lives. They loved each other. They worked hard. They went to school, and they contributed until it was determined that they were undesirable. Terrible things are happening outside. ICE is arresting families with papers. Children are coming home from school to find their parents not there. Parents are being ripped from their children's arms on the street by men in masks, armed with military-grade weapons. Even those with the right kind of papers are being arrested. And even those without the right kind of papers have the right to seek asylum under US law. Imagine for a moment the flooding in these cages in the Everglades, the mosquitoes, the mosquito-borne illness and disease, the unhygienic conditions and the lack of access to clean water. We've all seen the photos of the crowded conditions, people sharing toilets, the inadequate bedding, and we can't say we didn't know. We can never say we didn't know. We have to decide we're not this kind of nation that kills the Anne Franks of the world. My sons are Jewish. Their relatives were killed in the Holocaust in Eastern Europe. Our family remembers when we said never again. But here we are repeating history on our own soil. And it's still wrong, by the way, if it's not on our own soil. The only question now really is what we do. And I know we've talked about that a bit already on this call. We're not powerless. They want us to despair. They are flooding the zone with so many human rights violations, attacks against trans children, attacks on women's health care. We've had human rights violations for so long, and there's so many to keep up with, but we cannot despair. There are days when I feel despair. There are days when you might feel despair, but we cannot despair. We owe it to our children and to one another and to the families headed to those concentration camps and the prisons and jails here and the world over not to give in to the luxury of despair. Despair is a privileged response. So what can we do? One step is what we're doing now. We're speaking out. We're saying, no, this isn't wrong. And we're talking to one another. We can protest. We can protest online. We can protest in person. Learn your rights and carry those red cards. And thank you for sharing the links to those red cards. Film the raids as you see them. Call for help. Alert others if you see suspicious raids or activity in your town. Attend specific trainings online or in person to learn your rights and to learn how to support one another. You can write letters, make calls, find the 5 Calls app to help you automate this. You can write form letters for those who are feeling overwhelmed today, if you're not feeling overwhelmed today. You can be online, and as you're able to get offline and engage with one another in the world, encourage one another, offer rides to folks who are afraid to drive. If you're in a position of privilege, take food to folks who are afraid to drive. If you have funds or the bandwidth to volunteer, I've made a small list, and I'll put this in the chat. Organizations that I trust: the ACLU of your state and nationwide, Americans for Immigrant Justice, HIAS, the Georgia Asylum and Immigration Network, the Equal Justice Initiative, or EJI, ILA, Center for Gender and Refugee Studies, Immigrants Legal Resource Center, the Southern Center for Human Rights in Atlanta. Local public radio is under attack, and we won't find out about what's happening. Lawyers for Good Government, we won't find out what's happening if we are not connected to reliable news sources. Your local food kitchens, your local mutual aid programs, and your neighbors in need. In this time, we can offer our voices, our social media platforms, our research, our brains, our laptops, our texting fingers, your car, your body, your funds, your helping hands, and some days your voice and just your good wishes. If you're interested in fighting as a lawyer, I'm happy to talk to you guys about law school, but there are many, many ways to help without going to law school. Do whatever you would have expected the citizens of Amsterdam to have done for the Frank family in the secret annex. History is repeating itself, and we have to rise to this moment somehow. The moment's here. And when we prevail on these camps, let's get to work on these other human rights issues that are also a part of our American fabric, but not who we have to continue to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today, Sarah. I know we weren't really sure if it would happen, but you did it. I'm proud of you. Thank you. Well, next up, we've got Grayson, who is over there in my kitchen. Grayson, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and you're up, okay?
Hi everyone, my name hello everyone, my name is Grayson. I go by he, him pronouns. I am transgender, do have ADHD, and I am from foster care. My fiance is Hayden. He is 19, gender fluid, and goes by he, they pronouns, and is also in foster care. Today I'm here to tell you guys that
Yes.
no.
Okay, I kind of thought this might happen.
I had that feeling too.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, go for it. Go. Set up here. Okay, there we go.
Awesome. All right. Sorry about that, you guys. My name is Grayson. My fiance's name is Hayden, and we've been through quite a bit that have really put in a toll of the way that we are living and the way that we are doing our day-to-day lives. Not only just because we are foster kids, but also because of the fact that we're LGBT and we have mental health. Hayden has autism and social anxiety, and they really struggle to be able to go out into the day-to-day world doing day-to-day things like you and me or other people. And a lot of people have looked down upon just for the fact that they have autism or social anxiety. And it's become a really huge thing in our relationship and as people. I'm here to kind of tell you guys a little bit about our story and kind of lighten some things about foster care and being an LGBT youth. Me and Hayden met in foster care December 9th, 2023 in a independent living group home for transgender youth, female to male. At that point, I was in foster care for about a year while Hayden was in the foster care system a lot longer than I was for 10 years. I didn't deal with that much issues in foster care, just mostly issues with caseworkers thinking that I was going to do things that I wasn't ever going to do, just for the sole fact that I was LGBT. I was giving threats of not seeing my siblings anymore for the sole fact of not only that, but I was being threatened that I would never see my siblings again or my family again if I didn't straighten up my act. Hayden lost all of their siblings in foster care and had to watch all of them get adopted one by one. We both have similar stories, yet kind of age gapped apart. We ended up meeting each other in Kansas, in Wichita, and was able to get a little bit of help through that foster care independent living home with the people that we were living with. They were able to help us start our journey on gender health care and to be able to start looking at what is all needed to be able to change our names legally or be able to get top surgery or just get the testosterone that we need in our system. We ended up meeting our online best friend in person December 31st of that same year. They were in Iowa while we were in Kansas, and we never met them in person, but they were a big part of Hayden's life throughout foster care. They both met each other through an online support group, and when they were 13, and Coda was by their side through every single foster home, everything, single court case, every single abuse case, everything. Coda was there for when Hayden didn't feel like they didn't have anyone at that time. We ended up planning on moving in together, going to find our own place, and Hayden's biological mom had a house right next door that was available for rent. We ended up moving, but things were all nice and calm, and we thought that everything was going to go to plan. We were going to have the support from foster care like we thought. We thought we were going to have everything that foster care was going to help us with housing, like I said, help us with a car, help us getting into education. In all reality, we went and that wasn't anything that we were able to get. Not only a couple of weeks later, our best friend Coda, who we ended up taking with us to Texas, passed away in a very tragic freak car accident one rainy morning. And from there on, our life crumbled beneath us. We were starting to struggle with payments on our house. And just because we were young, the landlords thought it'd be okay to charge us an over amount of money per month, like over $1,000 just for a small 1-bedroom house. We ended up having to move again from Huntsville because going down there, we were promised a job that was going to be set up for me so that I could provide for the little family that I have created and that me and Hayden have created. After losing Coda in the car accident, Hayden ended up having to go into emergency surgery because he had a kidney stone that was lodged in his right side. By being in the hospital and having to go through that surgery, I didn't leave Hayden's side one bit. So we didn't have anyone at home taking care of our animals, and their bio mom and stepdad didn't want to take care of our animals. They helped here and there, but over the one day that they did, we ended up losing our frogs that we ended up having. Hayden also had those frogs since he was 13, and they went through every single foster home that he did. So losing those frogs to Hayden and losing Coded was a huge thing. We also ended up losing the cat that I ended up getting for Hayden for their birthday before we moved, also within the same month. So in April, we lost 4 lives in just that 1 month. So from there, we ended up into a big depression, and we felt as if we didn't have much people around us to help. Being in Huntsville is a small town, and Texas is very much a red state. So by us being LGBT and me finally finding a job, I wasn't safe. I was getting death threats on a daily. I was getting things thrown at my car. I was getting cussed at just by making a pizza. People would hang up the LGBTQ plus flag around and have it spray painted or burned in the center of downtown on the way to work or just to the grocery store. We weren't safe, and it wasn't okay for us to live there anymore. So we had some friends from, we're in West Virginia, reach out to us that knew Hayden previously through a different foster home. They promised us a forever home. They promised us love, to treat us like their children, and they promised us that everything was going to be okay, that we were going to finally be seen as the people that we wanted to be seen as. They were also LGBT, so they were able to help us get into gender affirming care, but after that, they weren't able to help us as much. They started treating me and Hayden differently, starting to put thoughts into our heads that we didn't love each other, that we didn't care about each other, that we're abusive for each other. They started taking care of Hayden more than they started taking care of me. They would, behind Hayden's back, tell me I was a disappointment, different things like that. I wasn't going to make it in life just the way I am, just for the sole fact that I have ADHD and I can't sit still. Some of you have noticed I've been fidgeting with the buttons on my shirt, but I still make it work. I'm very much a creative and outgoing person, and I'm here to be able to speak on behalf of me and my fiance's story. After so long, we ended up getting into a fight, and they kicked us out because we went to go spend the night at a friend's house after one argument to let things cool down. They told us to grab our stuff and that our animals weren't welcome there anymore, and we had to go pick them up 9 o'clock the next morning. Well, one of the times that we were going to get our stuff during the first couple of rounds, they ended up putting hands on Hayden, just for the sole fact that Hayden was trying to stand up for themselves. They were trying to not be trampled over because they were being told to shut up and that they weren't important, and whatever they had to say didn't matter. So when Hayden decided to finally get the confidence to stand up against someone for themselves, they were put into a headlock and thrown into a table and left marks on them. We ended up having to call the cops, but the case was legally dropped, thankfully, as well, not really thankfully, but as both parties were claiming victim. So Hayden was never able to get the justice that they needed for that. We ended up staying with her friends and that I met up in Weirton, and we stayed with them for a bit as we were trying to scramble on what we were to do and how we were supposed to get back. At that point, we had 3 cats, we had no money to our name, and we had no way to get back to campus. Finally, I was able to contact my biological dad, who previously me and him have never had a good relationship. It was always because I was transgender and because I was different and not the way he wanted me to grow up, we were constantly bickering and fighting. So we moved to Hayesville with promise that my bio dad would change. We ended up living with my very Christian grandfather and my amazing stepmother, who has helped us more than anything while living there.
At first, again, it was nice and calm. Things were peaceful, but then things started going downhill. He started drinking again, and us being LGBT was becoming a huge issue. He didn't like the fact that I didn't shave, or the fact that my voice was lower, or the fact that I was loving someone of the same gender. And my grandpa was also very much on the fence about it. It also gotten to a point where our animals were not safe anymore. Just for the sole fact that my cat was black, that my dad didn't like him. The fact that he was bad luck or in close to being an issue in the family, in the household, because he has a crooked tail. One day he started saying that he was going to shoot the cat and he was going to shoot me. And if I stood up for myself, I was going to regret it. So again, we packed up our stuff and we told them that we were just going to go for a garage sale. And we ended up moving to Topeka. Well, once my biological dad found out we moved to Topeka and packed all of our stuff, all hell broke loose. I ended up having to cut contact with him because of the way that he was acting and the things that he was saying. We ended up moving to Topeka with, again, yet no more hope to be able to start our lives with people that we had knew previously through middle school. They were promising to help us get on our standing feet, but then again, after a couple weeks to the first month, they started commenting on our weight, stating that Hayden was overweight and that their favorite holidays were Christmas and Thanksgiving, just so that they could pig out. Or commenting on me, stating I was too scrawny, that I needed meat on my bones. And it caused us to lose a lot of weight because we didn't trust the food. We didn't have a good relationship with it anymore. And between Hayden and I, ended up losing about 20 to 30 pounds. We ended up going through so much suicide attempts, from Hayden going to mental hospital to me trying to commit multiple times. At this point, we were at our lowest point. And with what's going on in the world right now, not being able to walk out of our house with the thought that we are going to be safe or not thrown in somewhere that we had no clue or to be separated was scary. We didn't leave the house for quite a bit. After everything was going on, they started commenting on our gender and the way that we were dressing, different things like that. Commenting on the fact that our animals were an issue, or that we were an issue, or that we always had to do something for them, whether that was babysitting or taking care of the house, but then getting on to us because we didn't have the time to do what they wanted us to do. That we didn't have the time to be able to get a job or get housing or get the disability for Hayden. We didn't have any privacy in that house. We weren't loved and cared for like we thought we were going to be. They ended up kicking us out because of one argument one day and stated that we were procrastinators and liars, when in all actuality, I got a job before the two of the adults out of the three in the house. That I got a job before them and I had a job set up that night for my first overnight shift. I was super excited. I was finally going to be working with animals, finally doing something that I liked doing, finally being seen as a person. Well, because they kicked us out, they ended up also calling my job and telling them that I wouldn't be able to make it into work anymore because I didn't have a reliable transportation as our car was broken down. They told my work to just go ahead and not let me to come in the first day. And my job just told me to not worry about coming in for the first day, that they would find someone else. Topeka ended up not being safe for us because we even had to call the cops as they chased me outside of their house as we were trying to get some of our belongings. We, at that point, were almost facing to living in a tent in someone's front yard, our best friend's grandparents' front yard. And we were going out, trying to call different people that we knew, seeing if they could house us, trying to call homeless shelters. When homeless shelters looked at us and told us that because we were LGBT and we were dating the same gender, that they don't take people like us. They don't take LGBT members, and if they did have the room, they would make sure 110% to separate Hayden and I and make sure that we would not be able to see or talk to each other. that wasn't an option for us. For so long, many people have tried separating us, but don't understand that we work better together and we've been through so much. Our best friends in Topeka ended up helping us out tremendously, getting us a ride to and from places, getting us our stuff, even housing my car at their place until we can find a way to get it back up here. I ended up having a friend reach out from a previous workplace in Weirton or in West Virginia, and they said they have a friend who would love to take us in. At first, we were very weary. We've at this point been through house to house to house, through state to state to state, not shown a single love or care in the world just because of the way that we are, just because of who we are. And that's when we finally met Amanda. We came in at like closer to midnight, 1 o'clock, and she stayed up just to make sure that we were okay. She found a way for us to be able to get up there. We found a way to find an Uber, and she helped us get all of our stuff in, helped us unload our cats. And from there, she has helped us tremendously. We have been able to see the community for what a community should be. We've never had trust in the community before. We were always shown hate and disgust just because of the way that we are. And Amanda has been able to help us tremendously to where we are now feeling seen. Hayden, from going to staying in the room 24/7, is now out of the room most of the day, talking to Amanda, sharing the stories, helping out around the house, to a point where we are now able to finally gain back weight because we feel comfortable enough to eat. We don't feel like we're going to be judged, or we're comfortable enough to wear the clothes that we are wanting to wear. Hayden, again, is gender fluid, so some days they feel more feminine, while other days they feel more masculine. In the house that we were in previously, Hayden wasn't allowed to dress the way that they wanted. They couldn't walk out of the room wearing a dress because it was too feminine, and they would have been called a female or dead names. But here we are able to be who we are. We're being helped tremendously in trying to find a new car, trying to find a way to work from to and there, getting health benefits. And now I'm proud to say, because of the amazing help that Amanda has gone through, we now have food stamps and we're on our way to being able to get health benefits. We're able to start looking into therapy and trying to couples therapy to go through all the trauma that we've been through. Our cats are finally loved and appreciated. We've noticed such a tremendous personality change just from them. It went from our elderly cat being abused in Topeka by a child and it being, it's his house, we just have to follow the rules, to now our elderly cat running out of our bedroom door just to say hello, just to walk around. We don't have any more worries and we don't have that much stress. We have so much help from the community, and that's what we really need right now. Is we need to be together as a community to show everyone who's struggling at the moment, to show ICE and Donald Trump that we aren't people that you can just stomp on. We have struggled by being LGBT, by being disabled, by being foster kids. We've struggled by trying to be separated. We've struggled with our mental health, going through suicide attempts, to mental hospital visits and stays, to even just financially, we've been struggling. But our goals in life is to voice our story, to help the people who might have a similar story understand that it's not all bad. That although we've been shown hate all of our lives, there's still a community out there that loves and cares about us. We've been able to meet so many wonderful people and raise so much money to be able to help us get where we're trying to be. And our goals in life is to be able to find our own home, to be able to create our own rules and adopt children out of the foster care system so that they feel loved and that they don't have to go through that system like we did. They don't have to go through the abuse. They don't have to go through the neglect of foster care workers or the neglect of not being with their siblings because they want to be separated or they don't want to be separated. We're here to be able to try and start our life, but also show other people who are struggling and who are in the same boat as we are that they're not alone. So I want to thank everyone here who's able to listen to our story, who's fighting for the chance of the people who can't fight for themselves. Again, for the longest time, Hayden and I weren't able to fight for ourselves. But the community has helped us gain that confidence to get back to where we are. Hey, I'm able to sit here today and talk to you guys about our story without having a mental breakdown because of the community. We've been able to come together and fight for what we believe in. So for those that are fighting with ICE or those who are in the concentration camp right now or whatnot, they can't fight for themselves right now. So for the community who can fight for them, we really do need to stand up and be their voice because they don't have one at the moment. We need to show people that we aren't going to be stepped on. They aren't just going to stomp us like the ants walking on the sidewalk. We're here to be seen and to be heard. So thank you everyone for listening to my story. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And I'm so grateful to listen to your guys' story and to have you guys listen to mine. I'm back to Amanda.
Back to you, Bob. I'm proud of you. Well, thank you for your patience, everyone. I'm glad we got that sorted out, right? Next up, we've got Seven Rasmussen. Seven, I'm so thrilled you're here. Let me allow you to unmute. Go for it.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Seven Rasmussen, she, they. I'm an author. I'm a science communicator. Currently, I'm a community college professor here in Tacoma. I'm here to talk to you about storytelling as a force against fascism. And I especially want to thank Amanda for organizing this and for inviting me to speak and for generally being a beacon of light in this awful but not infinite darkness. Being a scientist and then a writer taught me this. No one cares about your numbers unless there's a story behind them. In graduate school, I learned that you could discover the grand unified theory of physics. But if you couldn't explain it, or why it mattered. Sorry, my cat is you have seen him. He's very upset that this is not about him. If I learned that you could discover the grand unified theory of physics, but if you couldn't explain why it mattered, no one would care. When you write an academic paper, maybe 5 people in the world will read it. But the thing that people are going to read is a Scientific American or a Space.com or a Universe Today article that was written by a journalist, a storyteller, and that's going to make them understand why it's important. A number is just a support structure. The concentration camp in the Everglades can imprison up to 5,000 human beings. But the story of just one person out of that 5,000 is far more powerful than the number by itself. I also want to talk from my perspective as a science fiction author about the role that fiction has to play in these times. We know stories have the power to affect change. What I want to tell you is that there are stories that push from behind and there are stories that pull from the front. When you hear about a wildfire or a hurricane destroying a city, that story pushes us to want to fix the climate, to avoid more disasters. Here we need to tell these stories about these concentration camps because they must be eliminated, evacuated, destroyed, everyone involved prosecuted. These stories are saying what has happened here can never happen again. But that's only half of what stories can do. We also need stories that give people something to hope for. We need to show people what else can be possible. How many people today envision the future the way that Star Trek envisioned the future? How many people walk around with this notion that one day capitalism will end and everyone's needs will be met? And because of this, there will be starships and replicators and trips to other planets and infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Stories like Star Trek pull us forward. They say, let's imagine a future worth living in. We need both of these kinds of stories. We need the whole entire picture, not just things are bad right now, but things can be so much better. We need the push and we need the pull. So I hope this can provide some guidance for the journalists and the authors and the politicians on this call. And I hope that everybody else listening can imagine their role in making change. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Seven. You've always been a bright spot in my life. So thank you for being here. Next up, we've got Tanya Taylor Powers. Tanya, I'm going to pass the mic to you, my friend.
Hi, Amanda. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So first, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here. I want to thank Amanda for using your spoons of energy to host this event. Amanda's been a great leader in the COVID conscious long hauler community, and we need accessible events like this so that we can gather and be in community and share ideas and share strategies. Amanda, if you feel comfortable sharing any links of mutual aid for yourself and for Grayson, I know that you have been struggling, and I know you're very humble and try not to, mention it. And I know, but without you, this wouldn't be possible. And I know that you've been treading water, and that while you're trying to put on your own oxygen mask, you're helping Grayson and their partner. So if there's any links that you want to put in to the comments for mutual aid, if anybody can help, even donate $5 or anything and share it with people that you trust, any little bit helps. I think mutual aid goes a long way, and that's part of it. So for people that don't know me, my name is Tanya Taylor Powers. I am a COVID conscious long hauler. I also have ME/CFS. So I've been immunocompromised for a long time. I'm 49 years of age now, and I've been immunocompromised since I'm 17 from Epstein-Barr and ME/CFS, and then long haul COVID for the last few years. As far as like my personal story, I'm not going to get into that too much because we're here tonight for a certain reason. But if you want to know more about me personally, I do a lot of intersectional advocacy. You can Google me, Tanya Powers, long COVID. You can see an interview that I've done with the World Health Network. They do a lot of international public health advocacy regarding COVID consciousness. And so that's very important. If you can't see my shirt, I also want to talk about some disability justice and disability awareness, because it is Disability Pride Month, and I really want to acknowledge that. So for anybody who is on the call, who is either visibly impaired or is screen sensitive, as I know a lot of people are, my shirt says "Clean the air, mask up." I'm 5 feet small, sitting down with dark curly hair and glasses. I'm wearing a keffiyeh. I'm an anti-Zionist Jew. And I wanted to start with talking about Disability Pride Month. So for those of you that, whether you have invisible disabilities, visible disabilities, you are an ally, it's very important for us to have these online advocacy rallies, because I don't know about any of you personally, but when I've tried to show up in person to contact any organizers in my local rallies, they were not willing to accommodate anybody with any type of disability accommodation. So the first thing that I want to talk about, since a lot of you are COVID conscious, a lot of you are airborne aware, you're allies, the most radical thing that you can do is, when you're in a public indoor space, is wear a respirator. I won't call this a mask, so this is a respirator. This, what ICE is wearing, is a type of mask. We have to be talking about the differences. When people are immune compromised, you shouldn't have to have long COVID or ME/CFS or RSV or any type of illness that is debilitating. It shouldn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you. We are all temporarily able-bodied until something happens. And whether that is You know, some people may have internalized ableism. They don't understand what airborne awareness, all the things can do, but I'm here to make the distinctions of these things. What I want to educate people is, if you have a chance to listen to Carl Zimmer, if you can't afford his book, he is the author of a book called Airborne. It's the history of airborne illnesses. So there are things that we can do, like listening to his conversations for free on any of his podcasts, talking about airborne history. So whether it's COVID, whether it's measles, whether it's TB, there's a lot of things going on in the air that are making us sick. And eugenics and social murder, we have to connect all the dots to that. That's very important with disability justice. So one of the things that I've learned from people with who have been a little bit more seasoned than myself, that I'm becoming educated on, is one of the things with disability justice, as they say, the hashtag nothing about us without us. So it's very important to include people, whether they have visible disabilities, invisible disabilities, whether they're caregivers, or whether they're airborne aware. So when we're talking to our politicians, like the politicians that have shown up tonight or prospective politicians, I think it's important to hold them accountable that, of course, while we do need law enforcement, there's a difference between law enforcement and there's a difference between people in ICE and people that are bounty hunters showing up like this, hiding their faces to hide their identities because they're behaving like the Gestapo, let's be honest. And there's a very big difference of wearing something like this, which is a gaiter. I had been calling it a goiter, and one of my friends corrected me. So it's a gaiter mask that's what ICE is wearing. If I make a mistake, I'm open to corrections. But when you wear a KN95 respirator, or you wear an N95 respirator, you're not hiding your identity. Another instance too is if you're going to, let's say, if you have to travel through an airport and airport security needs to see certain things, you can wear a P100 like an Omni mask, which is clear and see-through. So I want to give people some tools that how to protect yourself, or like if you're going for an MRI, you can wear a P100 like an Omni mask, and that's see-through, so it protects you. Also very important, stoggles. I have mine here, so it's very important to talk about that. What I usually talk about when I'm doing my intersection advocacy is I talk about having mandates for clean indoor air quality as a non-pharmaceutical intervention. I am not at all an anti-vaxxer. I am definitely a fan of Louis Pasteur and all the strides that he's made with science. But of course, we are having, with RFK Jr. and people like Mehmet Oz, they're withholding the ability to have safe access to vaccines. And I think that we need vaccines that are not only accessible, but vaccines that prevent infection and prevent long COVID and prevent infections of all illnesses. And then there are some people that, because of their compromised immune systems, they might not be candidates for vaccines. And I think we have to consider that as well. So that's why I am a very strong advocate for the non-pharmaceutical intervention of clean indoor air quality mandates, which is layered protections, which is masks in healthcare. It's UL certified far UVC light 222 nanometers, which can be safely overhead. That's one of the things Carl Zimmer talks about in his book. So the 222 nanometers doesn't penetrate the eyes or the skin. We can also have regular UVC light in the HVAC, and that gets into the vents where the far UVC doesn't go, as well as HEPA and MERV filters. It's really important to have all three. And also, I think somebody might have been talking about mask blocks. If you have access, let's say if you are financially strapped, you can try to contact your local mask block, BLOC, and they will send you free tests, and they will send you a supply of free masks. And I understand that some people with disabilities cannot wear a mask, and I want to acknowledge that. But for those that can and are able, as long as we don't have clean indoor air in public indoor spaces, I think that's very important. The same way we would advocate for clean water because we share air. So that was, one of the first things about the fascism. One of the things that I wanted to bring up too with disability pride is I've just learned recently the 10 principles of disability justice by somebody named who goes by the name of Sins Invalid. They have a great website. I highly recommend you check it out. I'm not going to cover the 10 principles. I'm just going to cover a few things that I think are pertinent. So the first thing they talk about is intersectionality. So for those who don't know what intersectionality is, the way that they state it, simply put, is the principle that says we are many things and they all impact us. So we are not only disabled, we are also coming each from a specific experience of race, class, sexuality, age, religious background, geographical location, immigration status, and more. Depending on the context, we all have areas where we experience privilege as well as areas of oppression. So the term intersectionality was first introduced by a feminist theorist named Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. And it describes the experience, when she first used it, it was in regards to Black women who were experiencing both racism and sexism in specific ways, especially in healthcare. We are gratefully to embrace the nuance and the principle that this brings to our lived experiences and the way that it shapes perspectives that we offer. Other things that we can do to be empowered, and how do we fight this fascist dictatorship headed by Donald Trump and his cronies, anti-capitalist politics. So capitalism depends on the wealth accumulation for some, while the white, primarily, mostly ruling class at the expense of others, and encourages competition as a means of survival. Health supremacy is real. Those of us who've been affected by long COVID, ME/CFS, other disabilities, we have been aware of what health supremacy is, and have faced that discrimination. So the nature of our disabled body means that we resist conforming to the back to normal narrative and being quote unquote productive in a capitalist culture. Our labor is often invisible to a system that defines labor by able-bodied, white supremacist, gender normative standards. Our worth is not dependent on what and how much we can produce. So that means that whether we are advocating for remote work, flexible work schedules, and that also means that if we are not able to work at all, really standing up to the Social Security Disability Administration and explaining things like, when we're communicating with Social Security Disability Administration, accommodations, like they don't even have email access. And sometimes they'll call people at 9 a.m. and say, like, I personally am going through my own pending case with Social Security Disability. And they've called me at 9 a.m. and I said to them, do you think if I was able to work that I could answer the phone and be cognitively coherent at 9 a.m.? And I said, could you give me, an email access, because I'm sitting here in a dark room with my shades drawn because I have long COVID brain damage and light sensitivity. And what I do want to just, for those that don't know me, while you're looking at me, for anybody who is able to look at their screens while I've shown up and my camera's on and I'm sitting up at my desk, to be able to show up today, even though I had a very high pain day, I had to lay in bed in a dark room with my shades drawn and save all my spoons for several days, knowing that I was going to be in community. So just know that when you're looking at somebody who's showing up today, you can't tell what somebody's pain level is, and you don't know what they had to do to get to a place to be able to show up, to be in community. So another thing that I wanted to talk about was cross-movement solidarity. Disability justice can only grow into its potential as a movement by aligning itself with racial justice, reproductive justice, queer and trans liberation, prison abolition, environmental justice, and anti-police terror, deaf activism, fat liberation, and other movements working for justice and liberation. So this means challenging white disability communities around racism and challenging other movements to confront ableism through cross-movement solidarity. This is how we create a united front. As far as other things I wanted to bring up, so a commitment to cross-disability solidarity. So whether somebody has been disabled since they were born, whether somebody had been temporarily able-bodied and became disabled later on in life, like myself, We value and honor the insights and participation of all of our community members, including our allies. And that is especially those including caregivers and those who are most often left out of political conversations and left out of in-person rallies because they are not willing to accommodate us, to make us safe, and to make their events accessible. What we are doing is building a movement that breaks down social isolation between people with physical impairments and people who are sick and chronically ill, and that includes and not limited to psychiatric survivors and people with mental health disabilities, people with neurodiversity, people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, deaf people, blind people, people with environmental injuries and chemical sensitivities, and all others who experience ableism, isolation that undermines our collective liberation. What I want to add is that none of us are free until all of us are free. So collective active access is very, very important. Lastly, one of the points that I wanted to bring up in the 10 principles of disability justice is collective liberation. We need to move together as people with mixed abilities, whether that's multiracial, multigendered, mixed class, across the sexual spectrum, with a vision that leaves nobody behind. This is what disability justice is. This is what Disability Pride Month is about. But Disability Pride Month should not just be in the month of July. Disability Pride is every single day, 365 days a year. So we need to honor the long-standing legacies of resilience and resistance, which are the inheritance of all of those whose bodies and minds will not conform to whatever it is that is so quote on normalcy. Disability justice is not yet a broad-based popular movement, but disability is the largest minority group, not just in America, but in the world. Disability justice is a vision and a practice of what is yet to be. It's a map that we create with our ancestors and our great-grandchildren onward. In the width and the depth of our multiplicities and histories, a movement towards a world in which every body and every mind is known as beautiful. So to tie it all together, to connect the dots, because that's what I want you to think of me as somebody who is a dot connector, as somebody who is an anti-Zionist Jew. I didn't even know, to be quite honest, I didn't know what the words anti-Zionist meant until 2023. I just thought, oh, well, I'm a Jew and I care about everybody and I love everybody. I had to educate myself. I did meet Elie Wiesel when I was 22 years of age in college. I studied Jewish history, and my Jewish history class took me to see him, and he spoke. And what that did was it shaped me when he said that indifference is the epitome of evil. I knew then that whatever happened, whenever I saw injustice, that I would speak up. Way before there was pre-pandemic, a little bit about, to tie things together, I was an aspiring professional actress in New York City. I was a musical theater performer before I became disabled and I could no longer physically stand, but I did like musical theater and physical comedy, and I did a lot of animal activism. So I used to stand outside the New York ACC and I would advocate for animal rights, and I would advocate against no-kill shelters. It's all related, because when you see people being taken away from ICE, and when you hear people like Grayson talking about how their animals were taken away from them, you got to connect the dots and the full circle, that we have to be a voice for the voiceless. And even on a high pain day, to those of you that have shown up, even if your camera is off and you can't look at the screen and you're just listening, I just want to give my heart to you to say thank you for showing up, because I know that if you're having a high pain day, how hard it is sometimes to show up. I see you. I'm one of you. I was exactly you a couple of hours before I showed up, and I love you. And I want you to know that your voice matters, that if you want to put your voices and your contact information in the chat so we can all continue this conversation. I want you to know that you matter. Even if you don't have the spoons of energy to speak tonight, maybe at a different point you'll speak. Maybe you'll make a pre-recording, but you matter, so you're not invisible. What I also wanted to kind of just come full circle is, what can you do to stand up to this administration? My favorite singer is Prince. That's why I'm wearing a purple shirt that happens to say clean the air and mask up. One of my favorite things that he said, besides dearly beloved, we gather here today to get through this thing called life, is he said, use the internet, but don't let it use you. What we're doing tonight is using the internet for a purpose, because we're coming together in community and we're strategizing. So how can we strategize? What can I say that hasn't been said by other speakers tonight? Boycotting. It's not like, I know that if we're empathic at all, we're doom scrolling, we're seeing things all over the world, whether it's in Palestine, Congo, Sudan, we're seeing ICE rounding up people in our country. We're seeing things in America and all over the world. We're seeing things of all kinds of injustice. We're seeing healthcare being taken away. And we can sit on our phones and doom scroll, and we can cry, and we can, try. On one hand, yes, we need to be aware of what's happening, but the news cycle is fast and furious. So I want to say that, first of all, it's okay to take a break. While you need to be educated and you need to be aware of what's going on, compassion fatigue is also real. So learn some time management, especially when you're low on spoons. You must put your own oxygen mask on first. If there's only, let's say, one thing that you can speak on because you feel like, well, this is what I'm an expert in, that's okay. If there's something you're more knowledgeable of, it's okay. And it's okay to say, I don't know what that word means. I came to somebody couple years ago and I said, I don't know the difference between being an anti-Zionist and a Zionist. I just know that anti-Semitism is being weaponized. I discussed with people who were more educated than me. I sought out people who had more knowledge and more experience in disability justice and activism than myself. And I've learned from them as mentors to say, teach me, because I think you're great. And I don't know what I don't know yet, but I want to use my voice and I want to use whatever spoons that I can to help. So if you doom scrolling is not necessarily going to be it. Educate yourself, take some notes, but boycott whatever it is that you're able to. If you're not able to boycott everything because you're disabled and you need delivery because you can't go into a store, because let's say like you're like me. So what I do is I have things Instacarted. Do what you can within your means. If you can't do every single thing, if you can't stand up for every single cause, pick what you know. There's a good app called the Boycott app. I think there's an app called Boycat. There's an app called No Thanks. But absolutely hold your politicians accountable. So tonight we had people who were prospective politicians who came on this Zoom and they said a lot of wonderful things, but we got to hold them accountable. Like, are you going to fight for people with long COVID? Are you going to fight for people with ME/CFS and other people with invisible disabilities? Are you going to fight for Medicare and Medicaid for all, because healthcare is a human right? We need to hold these politicians that came on tonight and any other politicians to say, are you going to fight for the NIH funding, all of it, not just some of it, to be reinstated? Are you going to fight for the CDC funding to be reinstated? So on and so forth. These are just some examples. Another thing that I wanted to say is educate yourself. If you can't afford things, go to the local library. They do a lot of librarians. Are some of the best activists in the world. If you can get a hold of A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, Donald Trump does not want people reading anything by Howard Zinn. If you can watch any clip of anything Howard Zinn has ever said, you will learn about how people became collectively liberated in the past. One thing that I love is astrology, and you don't have to be an astrologer to understand history and patterns and to learn from what did people do in the past to collectively liberate nationally and abroad. The other thing that I want to say is, of course, whatever privilege you have, if you are white, if you have if you're working, if you're able-bodied at all, fight for those without your privilege. Do whatever it is that you can, but do it safely, do it mindfully, ask for accessibility. But this is why we need virtual protests, because what we're seeing at these protests, when people are peacefully protesting, we're seeing people who are using their privilege be brutalized. And that is why we need to have these virtual protests. One thing that I said at the last event that Amanda had me speak at, in case you weren't at that event and you didn't hear it because it wasn't recorded, is, well, everybody's talking about Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Stephen Miller and certain key people. There's other key people that are enabling this administration that are not so much in the spotlight that you need to be aware of. And I want you to Google them, and I want you to be educated and to be aware. I want you to be aware of who Curtis Yarvin is. That is spelled Y-A-R-V as in Victor, I-N. His pen name, and Peter Thiel. Thank you, Amanda. So Curtis Yarvin goes by the pen name Mencius Moldbug, and he has a blog called The Dark Enlightenment. He is literally behind Project 2025. They renamed Doge from what Curtis Yarvin is basically the mastermind of. He is the one in J.D. Vance's ear. He is the one in all of their ears. He is the one basically coming up with all of these eugenics tactics that are out of a horror movie like Soylent Green. So to wrap it up, I don't tell you about Curtis Yarvin to scare you. There's a lot of scary people out there. We know who they are, but it's also important to know who's behind the scenes, who is enabling people like Donald Trump. Because as you've heard, Donald Trump is sick. He may not be around much longer, but they're going to eventually install J.D. Vance. And it's important to know, because he's young, who is feeding and, you know, getting in the ear of J.D. Vance. And that is Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin and other billionaires. So don't underestimate what your dollars can do. Obviously, what people have said, call your politicians, but hold them accountable. And by making it obvious about sharing the air, and also never stop saying that COVID is airborne, measles is airborne, and TB is airborne, and that it is normal to not want to get sick. And we need to normalize that conversation. I asked a really good friend who I respect, they said, what time are you on? I said, I don't know. I said, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I've made some bullet points, but I don't know what to talk about. I said, what should I talk about? And my friend said, just say that, just keep masking, keep talking about clean air because we're tired. And I made that note. So to my friend JW, who's on this call, thank you for showing up. Thank you for everybody for showing up. And if you can also, can somebody also, for people that weren't here earlier, put in the chat about lawyers so we can have a class action lawsuit in case somebody didn't see that. Collective liberation is very important. And we, the people, against the Trump administration for denying our constitutional rights, our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to denying us Medicaid, Medicare, and SNAP, is something that should be a class action suit. I want to end it to say, united we fly, divided we fall. Find commonalities. If there are people that maybe had voted for Trump that are coming around, do not say, oh, well, you voted for this. Or if somebody's in Texas and they're going through climate horrific stuff, like I'm in a red state, I'm in Florida. Let me tell you, I didn't vote for Trump, but if a hurricane does to me in Florida what it does to the people in Texas, we need compassion and collective empathy. It's the only way we're going to be collectively liberated. So just come at people with trying to seek to understand, trying to find common ground, because that's how we're going to get out of this. This is how we're going to take our country back. And this is how we're going to survive, by collectively liberating each other, because none of us are free until all of us are free. I love you. Thank you, Amanda. I love you for this opportunity. And I thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I really appreciate the energy that you bring to this space. It means a lot. So our next speaker, they need to be anonymous, and but they also are in a different time zone, so they sent a pre-recording, and I'm going to pull that up now. I'm going to try to pull it up. There it is. Okay.
Amanda for organizing this rally. Hi everyone. like to thank Amanda for organizing this rally, and all the speakers and everyone attending. Thank you for the radical act of presence. If it feels comfortable, let's take a heart breath for the ancestors. It starts with a stretch and a yawn. Oh. And let your mouth fall open. And let the breath come in as effortlessly as it can. And exhale the gentle sigh. Breath is social architecture. I'm speaking on behalf of Holy Erotic Propaganda Arson, or HEPA, a disabled, queer, and trans theater collective. Before I speak about our current struggle with disabled erasure in media, I'd like to begin with a personal story. At the beginning of the pandemic, one of our members was living in Germany. They had a health crisis and were rushed to the hospital. At the entrance to the hospital was a memorial. It was for people who had been deported to death camps. The inscription on the memorial read, "Wohin bringt ihr uns?" Where are you bringing us? With the gift of historical perspective, the question may seem naive, but at the time, it was the beginning of what we now know as the Holocaust. The murder of people with disabilities, known as Aktion T4, was the Nazi regime's first mass extermination program, and it served as the prototype for the genocide that followed. Between 1940 and 1941, disabled people were taken from hospitals, like the one in which our group member was recovering, and forcibly sent to Nazi killing centers. Their deaths were reported with falsified causes like pneumonia or heart failure. Now, the question inscribed on the memorial takes on new urgency. We have historical precedent for Aktion T4. We are watching our means of bare survival, like medicated and SNAP, stolen in real time, while simultaneously watching the rapid expansion of extrajudicial detention camps. That's why we've come together today. But this question is not posed to the regime. They are plagiarizing the National Socialist playbook. They know where they're bringing us. The question is for those standing by in silent complicity, our non-disabled loved ones, neighbors, fellow residents of this country. Where are you bringing us? Which takes us to media and how cultural erasure and atrocities go hand in hand. In early April, our group produced a mutual aid fundraiser called Wake Up and Smell the COVID. The subtitle was An Evening Without Eric Bogosian, both a tribute to an artist known for speaking uncomfortable truths and cultural commentary. As COVID continues to devastate the arts, where are the elders? Our play got viral coverage in Broadway World, the primary theater publication in the US, and trended on Google News, which is no small thing with no PR budget and what the wider COVID-conscious community suspects is platform-level downranking of COVID-related content. In late April, the coverage seemed to disappear from Google News. Why? That we should all de-Google our lives, Google News still stands as a map of reality. And someone may have found that reality bad for optics. This was particularly heartbreaking because we have limited energy budgets and one of our members has been diagnosed with HEADS, so every word typed literally hurt. And existentially, we are forced to ask the question, if even the provocateurs might stand silently by as we're erased, who stands with us? Truth-telling is not a souvenir, it's a vocation. Now, we believe the possible suppression is happening again, and this time we will not accept dehumanization. So we're currently seeking transformative justice and repair. You might say, not wrongly, given the genocidal processes happening to people with disabilities, search engine suppression is a low priority. And yes, the first priority is always keeping people alive. And I would suggest it's important to take into account the power of storytelling, either to legitimize fascism or organize resistance against it. The Nazis knew the power of media, Gleichschaltung targeted Germany's world-renowned film industry, with all studios brought under state control within 2 years. Those working in the arts either fled, collaborated, or were executed. The NS Racial Policy Office produced eugenics propaganda films which portrayed people with disabilities as societal burdens. In 1941, the feature film Ich klage an, I Accuse, told the story of a doctor's wife diagnosed with multiple sclerosis who, after emotional persuasion, is euthanized. On the surface, it appeared to explore physician-assisted suicide sympathetically, but it was, in fact, covert Nazi propaganda designed to normalize the in-progress Action T4 campaign. History remembers the Nuremberg defense, I was just following orders. And there was a version of this in the arts too. Many filmmakers, screenwriters, actors, directors, producers didn't need to believe in genocide. They only needed to believe in keeping within the terms of their contracts. Those who produced them followed studio orders, stayed inside their NDAs, and told themselves it was just the industry standard. Yet when a system starts erasing critics, those contract-based justifications become moral surrender. It's the same logic refined through time. Compliance without rebellion is participation. So, to those standing by in silent complicity, are you outsourcing your ethics, or are you choosing to remember yourself? If someone has the courage to answer in the latter, the question, where are you bringing us, might not terminate in annihilation. Maybe this time it can be a shared horizon towards liberation. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad they were able to get that sound out. I'm sorry the volume is a little low. I had it cranked up all the way up. Okay, I'm glad. I hope you were all able to hear that okay. And then there was one, me. So my name, like I said at the beginning, my name is Amanda Finley. I've had a pretty rich life. I spent some time as an archaeologist. I sang opera for 10 years when I lived in St. Louis. I've worked in medicine since I was 15, and we'll actually get to that here in a second. COVID hit me very early on, March 6th, 2020, and yeah, we have the AC and the BC before COVID, after COVID. So, Mommy, you're so brave. You're not afraid of anything, my son said once. Nobody, I responded. Brave is when you're afraid, but you do it anyway. And as he said that, my mind traveled back to the summer of 1997 and a time I was very afraid. I was 20 and my family lived in Johnson, Kansas, a few miles east of the Colorado border on the vast high plains. Author Dayton Duncan once said, it's a place where the wind can blow you and do at will with you what it pleases. It was unlike the Ozark Hills where I grew up. It's a place of tumbleweed and cacti, prairie dogs and antelope. It's an unending sky that leaves you vulnerable and insignificant. It's also a place of hot summer days cooled down by powerful storms. My dad was a hospital administrator and nursing home administrator. He started a new job about 90 miles away from Johnson in a little town called Leota. Of all the places we've lived, our house outside Leota is the one I'm most homesick for right now. But in 1997, it was a fresh start. At the end of his first week, my dad had no sooner walked in the door after the long drive back when the phone rang. It was the office manager. She was distraught because the clinic receptionist quit at the last minute and they had no one for Monday morning. In a town of 1,000 people, it's even harder to find someone on short notice. My dad, however, had a solution. He informed the office manager he had someone and they would be there at 8 a.m. sharp on Monday morning. It was me. I was home over the summer from Truman State University, where I was a music major. I also worked in medical records at a hospital there and had volunteered at my dad's last hospital often, or I was volunteered. I suppose it was more conscription, like you'd see in an old cartoon where a sea captain breaks a bottle over someone's head and they wake up and they're filing insurance reports and typing medical reports. So a week later, my dad and I, after his second week and my first, we got in the car, went back home. It was a long day, and he had worked maybe 80, 90 hours that week. So I volunteered to drive. And as we drove, there was a big cumulonimbus cloud that started building up, and they're beautiful to watch, but it quickly grew into something more menacing. Now, my dad is also a weather spotter for the National Weather Service, and he put his paperwork down and he started eyeballing the storm. As we drove south, a heavy band of rain just missed us, and followed by a sheet of hail. The storm was chasing us out of the county. And if you know anything about storms, you know that when things stop coming down, they might be going up, and that's not a good sign. The black cloud above us was swirling in very discomforting ways. Not peeling his eyes from the window, my dad said, "You can drive a little faster if you want." But he never drove his 1982 Buick Regal more than 55 miles an hour. So I replied, "Dad, I've got it floored." We managed to make it safely to the next town, and this is in the least populous part of Kansas, so there's nowhere to hide out there. There's nowhere to take shelter. There's no house. There's no anything. It's just prairie, endless prairie. But we made it to the next town and eventually home. But it was a scary experience. But my dad taught me to be cool under pressure, and that lesson has served me well. The last 5 years of COVID and long COVID have been among the scariest. And looking back, I often wonder how I made it. How did I survive that first infection? It's the sickest I've ever been. Losing my home as a result of it and winding up living in a tent in the woods. Well, it was bad. My otherwise steel-trap memory has blanks from this time. One of my long haulers in the support group I started died during this time, and I was terrified that I would be next. But it wasn't some miraculous protection that spared me. It was community. The very village I built was there to sustain me through this unthinkable process. And until a few years ago, I wasn't even interested in politics. That was my privilege. I hated politics. Subconsciously, I think it was because some of my views were indefensible, and I didn't want to address that because that required discomfort. I also didn't think one voice mattered. How could it in a screaming sea of opposing views? I remember not wanting to vote in the presidential election one year. I talked myself into it at the last minute, however, by remembering that it was in my great-grandmother's lifetime that women were allowed to vote at all. And one great-great-grandmother who didn't have that right until the very end of her life. She was Cherokee. Off to the polls I went, albeit half-heartedly. But in September 2018, my thoughts shifted. Well into the Trump presidency, the Senate held hearings for a Supreme Court vacancy for Brett Kavanaugh. It was more than a confirmation hearing, though. It became an informal public referendum on sexual assault. The horrors of everyone hashtagging Me Too were forced into the limelight. But there were two very brave women who spoke for many of us. Anna Maria Archila and Maria Gallagher accosted Senator Jeff Flake at an elevator. They demanded his attention and logic and decency. They laid bare their lives, their lived experience, and they refused to allow him to look and hear past them. It was fierce. And in that moment, I realized one voice can matter. At the end of the day, Kavanaugh was still confirmed, but their example paved a new neural network in my brain, a bold assertion of power all of us have innately. When I was alone in my tent, I thought often of these women, and I thought of someone who inspired me in my childhood, a teacher, Mary McKinley. She taught me the power of knowing what tools you have and how to wield them. The tool in my tent with me was my cell phone. I spent my evenings charging devices and power banks at the bathhouse up at Weston Bend State Park where I was camping. And all day, every day, I forged connections. I created community. I was focused on finding the thing I could do, squashed the fears of what I couldn't do. And I went from thinking, no one is ever going to see this. No one's ever going to see any of this, to thousands of people seeing this. And it was very raw. It was very ugly. Especially after my friend Jake died, I melted down very publicly. I took to Twitter, and instead of typing in messages, I left over 700 videos. But I thought, no one's ever going to see this. I was wrong because the universe has a funny way of listening sometimes. And one evening I noticed a message. It was actress Morgan Fairchild. She said, "I saw your post about your friend. I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" "No, I'm not. How are you?" But Morgan wasn't the only one. I almost fell over the day that Representative Ayanna Pressley followed me, and she did more than pleasantries and clicks. She truly listened. Late one evening, on a night I was particularly tired and unwell, I had a gut feeling. I thought, if she were to call me tomorrow, what 3 actionable things would I tell her? And I wrote those things down. She called the next morning, and those 3 things are now in the Treat Long COVID Act, which she now co-sponsors. I eventually made it out of the tent, as you can see, and I'm now housed. The job situation, I work at the IRS for the moment, and the job situation there is scary, but I've done more than just learn the lesson of acting despite fear. I've lived it. And each of you have the power to do the same. Our world is very dark, but you, each of you, are a light. You might not be able to see it, others do. I love the light, for it shows me the way, yet I will endure the darkness, for it shows me the stars. Lean into each other, into your strengths, into your community, into the knowledge that you can do this. This is our time, and this is our country. This is our opportunity to show the world that we are founded on the principles that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are inextricably are going to come out of my mouth, are inextricably grounded in diversity and freedom. This is our time to be the light in an ever darkening world. And in the words of Sarah Williams, "I have loved the stars too fondly to be fearful of the night." I want to thank everyone for being here today, for showing up, for creating community in ways that are accessible to everyone. And please keep the conversations going. We will have more online rallies, so stay tuned. I have some really awesome people who volunteered to speak. I'm kind of blown away, like, wow, I thought you wouldn't even read my message. That's great. So everyone have a wonderful night. Go out and be the light. And if you find that one thing you can do, okay? Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for being here.